on a bit of a romp. We're looking at how major technological changes reshaped history and ushered in new ages of globalization. And we've seen how the discovery of fire during the Paleolithic age reshaped humanity physically, economically, and socially. We've seen how the discoveries of agriculture formed the Neolithic age, how the domestication of the horse was the defining innovation, breakthrough technologically of the equestrian age, how multiple advances in every sphere of life, communications, information, physical infrastructure, metalworking, military technology, reshaped and enabled the classical age of empire. And what we see when we move to the fifth and the sixth and the seventh ages of globalization, to the ages of transoceanic empires from 1500 to 1800, or the age of industrialization from 1800 to 2000, or today's digital age, is not only how continued fundamental breakthroughs of technology push each age to the next, but how it seems, and I think it's not just a feeling, but a reality, how technological advance accelerates. The management of fire was developed over tens, hundreds of thousands of years. The development of agriculture over thousands of years. The harnessing of metalworking over thousands of years. But when we start with the fifth age of globalization, of transoceanic empires, and then move to industrialization, and then move to the digital age, we have a feeling of tremendous acceleration, that technology begets technology in a far more systematic way. And that's not an accident, because technological innovation becomes not only a fact of societal life, but it becomes a core industry of the economy. In other words, directed scientific and technological change become a hallmark of the world after the year 1500. In fact, a good starting point would be the breakthroughs of navigation in the 1400s, that is the 15th century, in Portugal, which became a pioneer, even as a very small country, a pioneer of navigational breakthroughs. Now recall, in the 1400s, China could have ruled the oceans, probably the oceans of the world, because its great fleets were crisscrossing the Indian Ocean in the first decades of the 1400s, that is, the first decades of the 15th century. But China decided to stop its ocean going in 1434. It retreated to an inward posture. It's a decisive event in history that we will revisit and try to understand. But just as China was retreating from the oceans, little Portugal, led by a prince, Prince Henry, whom we know today as Prince Henry the Navigator, was organizing very consciously a school of navigation to push new technologies, to use devices for astronomical observation for purposes of navigation, to use the compass, to use new breakthroughs in ship design, such as the caravels and the carracks. This is a carrack of Santa Maria in Columbus's voyage, to push forward the capacity to extend Portugal's reach across the oceans, and largely for a purpose, not for discovery per se, but for profit, wealth, glory, and conquest. And so Henry the Navigator and his school of navigation became an example of the modern world's directed technological change, where patrons of science, technology, engineering, typically the state, would invest in technological breakthroughs and increasingly harness a scientific worldview that became so powerful and so shaped it itself is considered a scientific revolution, epitomized, of course, eventually by the 17th century breakthroughs of Isaac Newton and his creation of modern physics as a scientific discipline, which then opened up so many other areas of knowledge and insight and technological advance. So the age of transoceanic empire is an age of discovery, exploration, and directed scientific and technological know-how. When the Americas are discovered, in quotation marks, by the Europeans, of course, they were known full well to the indigenous populations of the Americas, but when the Europeans discovered the Americas, this also opened up their minds. It was mind-blowing. It was mind-boggling what they discovered. Continents that they had no idea about, different technologies, different kinds of agriculture, different kinds of people. And it opened up the mind for all types of speculation and all types of exchange of goods and services, and of course, new forms of warfare and new forms of exploitation as well, including what became the horrific slave trade of Africans to the Americas. But that breakthrough of the discovery of the Americas, remember how Adam Smith called it the most significant event in human history, together with Vasco da Gama's voyage from Europe to Asia, became not only an event that changed the world in its connectivity, its knowledge, its relative power, but also unleashed a massive wave of technological change, science and innovation that continues to this day, and not only continues, but continues at an accelerating rate. It was in the 18th century that this transoceanic age, the fifth age of globalization, began to transform to the sixth age of globalization with yet new technological breakthroughs. And in this case, the new technological breakthroughs were heavily concentrated in Britain. And it was in Britain where the scientific revolution led by Isaac Newton, and in Britain where directed scientific and technological advances were spurred by patronage, where these breakthroughs in technology became a tsunami of technological change. The epitome of this was the development of mechanization of all different aspects of the economy in the 18th century, the vast advantages of metallurgy with the massive increase of steelmaking in Britain in the 18th century, and during the 18th century, the improvements of an early steam engine, first brought to bear in Britain in the first years of the 1700s, but then decisively improved in a series of inventions by James Watt in Glasgow, Scotland, in the 1770s that made the steam engine economical, extraordinarily powerful and robust, and made steam the energy of the new era, and by doing so invented what we have come to call the fossil fuel age, because it was James Watt's steam engine that was the decisive breakthrough that enabled not only mechanization, but the mass factories of the industrial era and the tapping of the fossil fuels that led to a vast expansion of power in the physical sense, but also power in the geopolitical sense. James Watt's steam engine created industrialization. Industrialization created a British Navy that ruled the oceans. The British Navy enabled a British empire on which the sun never set. So these technological breakthroughs fundamentally reshaped global geopolitics, making Britain the hegemon of the 19th century, by far the most powerful nation and empire of the 19th century, and reshaping global political life in fundamental ways that endure until today.